welcome back. The Africarribean Trade and Investment Forum has ended, and Channel Television correspondent Chris Williams was there, gave us a lot of information and details of what happened. Now, let's follow up on some of the actionable plans from that forum. We have Mrs. Moji Hopono Wusu. She's the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Woodhall Capital Limited. She was there and now joins us to tell us her experience and some of those lessons learned from that. Good morning, Mrs. Wusu. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
So how was your experience there at the summit?
It was a very interesting, very educative, informative session. We had the coming together of various businesses from the African continent and the Caribbean continent coming together to discuss areas of collaboration. The whole idea of the summit was to institutionalize the relationship between African businesses and the Caribbean businesses. And we had a plethora of various businesses come together to discuss actionable points, as you made mention earlier, how we can do things together, how we can do practical things together, and how to get on with getting on with it. I'm not just making promises, as forums are often known to do in conferences, but how we can get on with some of the issues that we discussed in the 3-day summit.
So for you, what are some of those actionable plans you went away with?
I think for us and a lot of the African businesses that were there, it was just informative to just know the wealth of things that, the wealth of business opportunities, and we're deeply in trade and investment opportunities. The conference provided us with a platform to engage with businesses in the Caribbean. We sat down and discussed how to unlock financing gaps. We sat down and discussed how to bridge some of the supply chain issues that we're seeing in the global context. We had climate on our mind. We looked at our various agreements that would be signed and the various arbitration if need be. These are things that concern businesses. We had a powerful delegation of African businesses going there on the platforms, discussing things and issues like logistics, shipping, trying to find opportunities where African businesses can plug in Caribbean businesses in the CARICOM region. We discussed everything from trade finance, investment. My firm particularly, we engaged with some legal firms to help bridge the credit risk insurance issues that we have in international funding, and how some of the law firms or the asset managers there can help us engage properly and find solutions that are relevant to African businesses, African financial institutions, African sovereigns, and looking at the Caribbean as a region for solutions, particularly in financing.
Well, I hope some of those attractions will also be the way of Nigeria, so we don't take all the investments there, but also remember that we need investments back home.
And absolutely, we do need investments back home, and we need to look at other regions apart from our traditional regions of the West, and looking at solutions coming from the Caribbean, funding solutions. There's a lot of funds parked in those regions that are directed into the West. And we're trying to see how to unlock some of that funding that will then direct the funding into Africa and particularly into Nigeria. So yes, absolutely. We went there with the mindset. How do we get investments flowing into Africa, particularly into Nigeria? How do our businesses unlock some of the funds that are parked there and directing them, for example, into our oil and gas industry, helping solve some of the FX liquidity issues, some of the insurance that we're talking about with the Caribbean countries would actually help unlock that, because if you can credit risk insure a lot of your transactions, you'd find that it would lead to an increased traffic in financing.
All right, I do know that one of the areas of conversation was also agribusiness and food security. Yeah, what are some of the findings from there?
Yes, so of course, as you know, the conference was in the Barbados, and they're huge exporters of sugarcane, for example, and finding how we can export some of the refined products, export them from the Caribbean into Africa, rather than engaging with the West again. establishing new trade partners for the Caribbean, particularly in agricultural products, and vice versa, and from the African continent into the Caribbean. One of the issues that was discussed hugely was the cost of logistics, where they bring them from halfway across the world from other climes. And we're trying to see how logistics links, particularly we discussed airlines, direct airlines between African countries, Nigeria. I was speaking to some of the gentlemen in the conference who are looking at establishing an airline direct flight from Nigeria into Barbados, into some of the CARICOM countries. And I find that if we're able to unlock the logistics issues, the difficulties where you don't have to fly into America or into Europe to get into the Caribbean, you'd find then that some of the food exportation issues would be identified. The other thing that we discussed, which was very important and very enlightening for me, was the licensing, and saying that, you know, between the African and the Caribbean continents, we find that if we're able to identify where the issues are in licensing, in removing some bottlenecks, particularly for agricultural products, ensuring that the standards that are acceptable to us are established, which would help with the flow of agricultural products between Africa and the Caribbean.
And then I see that there was the creation of the Africa-Caribbean Business Council, also one of the successes from there. Any idea how this is going to work? How can Nigerians participate? Was that exposed there?
Yes, so the council was set up, obviously, the first initiative was signed on the 7th of September 2021, and the 3-day conference actually tried to actualize some of the deliverables from that. And so the council was set up. Nigerians are very encouraged to get in touch with that council. I think the information we brought out shortly within the communique, engage with them, find out the different opportunities for Nigerians, find out what we could be exporting to them, to obviously, as I said, mentioned earlier, that would help bridge the FX liquidity and ensure that we remain an exporting country. There's some of our products that may not be as needed in other or in our traditional Western trade partners. Identify some of those that will be needed in the Caribbean and vice versa, looking at establishing plants for some of their own raw materials in Nigeria, bridging and coming together to solve some of our infrastructural issues that would prevent some of that investment in coming in. So if we want to develop factories, for example, to process some of the raw agricultural products, we need to obviously ensure that we're having dialogues around some of our infrastructure. Power, for example, could be one of the hindering points why factories may not be established. And if we're engaging on that and ensuring that we're pointedly trying to address those problems so the business will flow from those regions, particularly in agriculture, the Business Council would identify the infrastructure shortfalls and that exist between the Caribbean continent and even in the African continent, and ensure that pressure is put on those governments to address those infrastructural gaps that are preventing investments from coming in.
Yeah, well, it would be very nice to have the council open conversation with some of our councils here, the Lagos State Council, the Abuja, you know, and have maybe an office or representation back here. You know, I think because Nigerians, I do know a lot of people want to seize the opportunity, but if they are not reachable, then that might make it difficult.
And I'm sure that that's being looked at, and not only in Nigeria, across Africa. With the AFCFTA initiative, you'd find that there will be a standpoint for the Business Council to deal with the African Union, the Nigerian Business Councils, Lagos Business Councils, and engaging. You'd find that there'll be representatives from most countries there, and there'll be points of contact where you can engage actively with that council.
And then Ghana was very active, I see that, because I see that they signed at least 2 agreements with their Export Promotion Council, as well as the Union of Trade Association. Did we have any group, association in Nigeria sign any agreement there?
We had groups sign, and I particularly tell you that we had companies signed from Nigeria Woodhull Capital signed an agreement with Africarribean Bank, a trade agreement, a trade facility, a financing facility, where they charged us to identify oil and gas companies, downstream, upstream, that are looking for international funding, who have issues in establishing letters of credit, guarantees. In my own session, there was MRS that signed $150 million financing facility. We had Deji Akinyanji on the agricultural side signing an agricultural financing facility. So yes, not only were we signing MOUs, we were actually, Nigerians were actually there signing actual real transactions. So not just partnerships in theory, we're there on ground signing huge transactions. And I think if you go through the website of what happened last week, you'd find that real money was actually put on the table.
Wow, very interesting and heartwarming there. I trust Nigerians to always make the most of every opportunity.
We did. We had representation from Owando, and we were there. We were very, very well represented, and we're active on all the panels. I don't remember any panel where there wasn't an active Nigerian businessman or government official, driving our case and speaking about the opportunities that lie therein in the country.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of what they say. If you go to any country and don't see a Nigerian, just take your leave. That means that place is not livable.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much, Mrs. Moji-Onkponu-Wusu. Thank you so much for your time, and we wish you success following that meeting that you had at the Barbados.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Speak to you soon.
All right, so it's good to know that, the meeting was not just a talk meeting, but a walk meeting. Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back from the break, we'll have the markets waiting for you. This is Business Morning on Channels Television.